Hi, today I want to talk about the festival of Shavuot. Shavuot literally means weeks, and this is because the date that Shavuot falls on is 7 weeks or 49 days after Pesach. And we count this period, counting the Omer, as we mirror the journey that the Jewish people went through when they left the land of Egypt and they moved up the spiritual levels that were required in order for them to be able to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai, which is the event that we are commemorating on Shavuot. Shavuot is also one of the pilgrim festivals, so in temple times, this was one of the times of year when Jews from all over would travel to the temple to make sacrifices and to gather together for this pilgrim festival. And the other aspect of Shavuot that we're going to look at today is what some of the customs are as well that we practice on Shavuot. Because while Shavuot is in and of itself a festival, and so there are all the laws that goes with festivals that we follow as well. You know, we don't do any work and we have special prayers that we make and special portions of the Torah that we read. There are also a whole range of customs that we enjoy on Shavuot. We're going to talk about those as well. So in Israel, Shavuot is just a one-day festival, so it goes from sunset to sunset, around about. And in the diaspora, where we are, Shavuot is a 2-day festival, and we welcome in Shavuot like we do with other festivals and like we do with the Shabbat, the Sabbath, with the lighting of candles. And because it's a festival when it's not the Sabbath, we can transfer flame. And so when you light your candles on the first night, you also light a longer lasting candle that you can then use to transfer flame so that you can light, bless and sanctify Shavuot on the second night as well. And just a quick reminder that we've got some differences in terms of the things that we can do on Shabbat and on festivals. And likewise with Shavuot, we can cook on Shavuot, we can transfer flame on Shavuot, we can carry on Shavuot, but it is a time for no work, for us to abstain from work like we do on Shabbat as well. One of the beautiful customs that we have on Shavuot is called Tikkun Leil, which it's translated as the night of repair. Tikkun may be a word that we're familiar with from concepts like Tikkun Olam, to repair or complete the world, the mission that we have in helping Hashem to complete and better our world. And so it's the same concept of repair. And it begs the question, what are we repairing? What went wrong 3,300 and so years ago at Mount Sinai when we were due to receive the Torah that we need to have a night of repair? And amazingly, crazily, unbelievably, on the eve of the most important day of the Jewish history, receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai, we have this bizarre situation where the people of Israel sleep in. And that is what we're repairing. For any of you who have been waiting for an exciting event at any point in your life, you know, or if you're waiting to catch a flight or waiting for something important, you'll know that feeling that it's hard to get to sleep. You wake up several times during the night. You often wake up very early or you can't sleep, and yet the Jewish people slept in. And so to make a repair, a tikkun for this, the tradition is that we stay up most of the night or all night or late into the night, depending on your age, your stage, your custom. And we study Torah. And normally what you'll find if you come to our synagogue is that on that night there'll be a delicious meal with lots of different speakers and learning and opportunities for study that will go late into the night. But this year, because of coronavirus, we're not in a position to be able to do that together in person. So we're going to bring our Tikkun Leil, our night of repair, forward in the evening and do it virtually on Zoom, where we all get a chance to come together virtually and learn together and share different ideas about Torah learning. And then I totally encourage you that on Shavuot to take the opportunity in your own homes to learn together and to do some of the repair for that sleeping in that we all did. I say we all did because the concept that we have in Judaism is that all of us who are Jewish, whether we were born Jewish or we've converted because our souls were Jewish, all of us were present at Mount Sinai. We all received the Torah, whether we were there in body or in spirit. So we're not just doing a repair for something that our ancestors did. It's actually we're part of this story as well. And so the Tikkun Leil, the studying through the night, is a repair. Another one of the beautiful traditions that we have on Shavuot, this festival of weeks, this pilgrim festival, this festival of learning and of receiving the Torah, is the tradition to eat dairy food. As you know, one of the ways that we often celebrate in Jewish culture and tradition, and there are big discussions about this in the Talmud, is through eating meat. It's a celebratory food, it's a luxury food, it's something that we eat on the Sabbath and on festivals. And yet Shavuot is famous for eating dairy rather than meat. And the history behind this, the Torah was received on Shabbat. And as part of receiving the Torah, we received all of the Torah laws. It wasn't just receiving the Ten Commandments, it was receiving the whole Torah. And part of that included all of the mitzvot around kashrut. How do we eat kosher? Which included the laws of shechita, of the ritual slaughter of meat, so making sure that we only eat meat that is appropriate for us to eat, but also that the meat has been killed in the most humane way before we eat it as well, and has been treated correctly before we eat it. And of course, all of those things couldn't be done on Shabbat. So even though we'd received those rules and we were able to then know how to keep kosher and eat kosher meat, we didn't have the opportunity on that first day that we received the Torah. And so we had to eat dairy because we couldn't prepare any meat. And because of that, there's still a tradition until today that we eat dairy as well. There are some other ideas and reasons behind eating dairy too, but it's the most common cited reason and makes it one of my favourite festivals, I have to say. I love that we get the opportunity to have a nice dairy meal. And again, traditional foods include blintzes, cheesecakes, but you also find macaroni cheese, you name it, just dairy is the way to go. Just to remind you though, this is a minhag, a custom, not halacha, not Jewish law. So for those who are lactose intolerant or don't want to eat a dairy meal, there is no obligation to do so. But it is one of the traditions of Shavuot as well. The other thing that we read on Shavuot is Megillat Ruth, the Book of Ruth. And because of reading the Book of Ruth, there's also a really special association between this festival and between conversion. Ruth is one of the most famous converts in Jewish history. She's famous for saying to her mother-in-law when her husband had passed away and her mother-in-law tried to send her away to start a new life, she said, "No, where you go, I'll go, your people will be my people." And she, despite not being Jewish, she took on Judaism. And she's a matriarch in her own right. We know that the line of Mashiach, the Messiah, will come from Ruth. And she also was the ancestor of King David. So she's hugely honoured in terms of lineage and her story in our history. And so we read her story, the Megillat Ruth, on Shavuot as well. And this has become a festival that is associated with celebrating conversion and converts. And it's a nice chance for me to say how blessed we are to have such beautiful souls in our community who've gone through the conversion process or in the process of going through conversion. And it's a really powerful time of the year from a spiritual perspective in terms of conversion as well. As we wrap up the period of counting the Omer, because Shavuot does symbolize the end of counting the Omer, it's also just nice to reflect on the journey that we've been on for the last 7 weeks, starting with Pesach and counting each day. And to note that each day, not only did we count the weeks and the days, because the Torah talks about counting weeks and days, so we want to fulfill both aspects of that commandment, and that's why we count days and weeks. Well, you might say it's 1 week or it's 7 days. We count both each night. But we also talk about the different sfirot, these spiritual, amazing attributes of Hashem that we also want to be able to generate in ourselves. Things like chesed, loving kindness. And each period that we go through, each of the weeks has a different sfira associated with it, and each day within those weeks has a corresponding sfira as well. And so the idea is that during this time between Pesach and Shavuot, we will have climbed up these spiritual levels. And so Shavuot is also a time of celebrating, hopefully, a spiritual high point, and that it's elevated us, and that this time of year has lifted us up to a place where we're in an even more spiritual state than we were when we celebrated Pesach 7 weeks ago. But just because we've finished counting the Omer doesn't mean that that needs to stop. We keep on progressing through the year, and we're heading already with the high holy days in sight as we come later through the year in the calendar. And there's a beautiful kind of visual idea for how spiritual growth works in Judaism. Everything in Judaism is very cyclical, so you'd think it would go round in a circle. Each year would go round in a circle and each week goes round in a circle there, and each month. But actually, a more useful image is that of kind of a corkscrew, that even though we go back to the same place, we're always climbing. And so one of the other things to keep in mind with Shavuot are our own journeys, that hopefully we keep moving spiritually up and up and up as we go through those patterns together. So I wish you Chag Sameach. May it be a wonderful Shavuot filled with lots of learning and plenty of cheesecake. And we look forward, please God, next year to all being together in person in our synagogue for Tikkun Leil, for this night of learning. But in the meantime, come join us on Zoom and we'll learn together online.